I think my favorite takeaway from this conversation with Christina Frei is the idea of a generosity practice that asks, pretend that you have all the resources you could ever need and want. What would you want to give? Through some fascinating research, Christina, a business mentor, uncovered 5 entrepreneurial archetypes: nurturers, adventure guides, door openers, steady presences, and celebrators. Every type has their own way of changing lives and getting clients. Are you ready to learn what type you are? Let's get into today's episode. Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
All right, Christina Frei, how are you today?
I'm moving and grooving. Here we are.
Moving and grooving. I love it. So we were just chatting, of course, before we recorded, which we always do. And then we're like, oh, we should start recording. So tell our audience about who Christina Frei is, your background, and kind of what led you here.
Yeah. So, oh my God, how much time do you have? All right. So I'll start with, I've had 2 really strong tracks in my life. One is marketing and advertising. Started out of school, worked for big brands in huge firms in New York, went to Silicon Valley, did a bunch of like beta programs, which are part of marketing departments for, tech companies. Then I could go on, like just different. I was like the marketing department for an engineering firm. I became a youth speaker, and that was some of the hardest marketing I've ever done. So just like marketing, all the years. At the same time, I had a track of personal development where I was doing really intensive energy work in Berkeley, California for 6 years, just learning how to turn on my 6th chakra and like look at energy, get really present. And so I thought these 2 tracks would never meet, right? Who would think that they could possibly meet? And then in 2014, there was a turning point in my life where I just kind of knew like, all right, stop messing around. There's this thing that I knew I needed to be doing in the world, and I'm happy to talk about it. But like, that's when the 2 tracks came together, and I kind of haven't looked back. So the way that I do things is marketing through total presence with the people that you want to do business with. That's sort of how that plays out. Yeah.
Love it.
Cool. Wow, you nailed that origin story. I think what's interesting about the story is this idea that these 2 halves of me could never converge, and like they do, and they often do, and they maybe should, right?
Yeah,
I think
you might as well at least ask the question, can this work?
I mean, you have all that equity, right? All that equity in your previous career, because lots of health coaches come to this as a second career. That's just true. Because as health coaching matures, we'll probably see more people entering it as a first career, but right now it's a second career for most people. I came from marketing and advertising as well. I use every skill I earned in those decades in my health coaching job, in my building my business, and obviously marketing my business, but even project management and communicating with people. And we don't have to throw away our previous life to come into our new life. They can converge.
So true.
Okay. So you kind of like teased, there was a piece in there where the personal, the energy work, the advertising marketing work, it came together in this certain kind of way. So you help people marketing through total presence. What is that like? Describe that a bit more for us.
Sure. So what happened in 2014 might answer that question. So there's a mindset practice that I was playing with for years that I kind of knew, when you just know in your gut, like there's something in here that I need to follow. I need to follow this thread. So when I was at a big turning point in my life, I decided to just go for it. And what that looked like was, it was pretend that you have all the resources you would ever want. And you just close your eyes and you're like, well, if I could just give anything to the whole wide world, to the people in my life, to everyone I love, or just to anybody, what would I want to offer? And that contemplation, I call it now the generosity practice. But I mean, you can just me asking that question, which the core question is, what feels good to offer to life today? I would be curious what you are like, what you're experiencing in your body when you even think about that. Like it sort of takes you out of the limitations of yourself as a human and takes you into, wow, I just love being a contribution. And I get to decide every day what kind of contribution, at least on an etheric realm, right?
Yeah.
So I studied that. I used it like crazy to help me transition in my own career. And it really helped beautifully. Like I just got out of my own way, connected with the right people, like all the things that flowed so I could get great opportunities. So I just started teaching it. I was like, is this some weird psychic thing that I'm just like making up in my head? So eventually I had call it a field study, 40 people in 5 countries who just did it. They did the same practice for 30 days, and then they sent me little videos about their results and how they used it. And during that journey, I identified 21 things that happen in your inner life and your outer life when you do this practice, like one little contemplation like that, 21 things. And one of them was, wow, as a business owner, because there were a few business owners in the group, I'm a better marketer. Like they would tell me, I'm a better marketer. I'm a better negotiator. I get out of my own way and I just want to get out there and help people. Which is it really a surprise when you're taking 10 minutes in the beginning of your day and you're just getting excited about how you can be a contribution in life? Like, of course, that will fire you up to get out there and change lives. So I just followed that thread, and that led me, I'll stop there for a second because there is more to that story. But yeah, that's where it began.
What I love about that is so many health coaches come to health coaching with this desire to be of service. And what they have a hard time reconciling is this idea of being of service and owning a business and making money. And they have a hard time kind of combining those two things. But when you think of it in terms of what do I want to offer to the world today, that's of value, right? So if something is of value, typically there's an exchange of value somewhere, right? And in today's world, in order for you to be able to be present to create that value, you need to be able to afford to be there. And so it's really just an exchange of value, and don't get me wrong, there are times when I've done health coaching for someone for other than money because there was something else I needed. So someone helped build my website for me, and we exchange that. So it's just exchanging two things of value. It's about you being a contribution that makes the world go round. I mean, you have to kind of get this notion out of our head. And so many people approach marketing in this, like, I got to sell something. I've got to convince people instead of sharing and being of value. It's that mindset switch of realizing that what you have to share is going to be meaningful for someone. And we just need to help those people find you.
Okay. I want to get philosophical about that for a second. So The way that I see it is all these people who want to serve, and I think we all are those people, we're all going through this transition where we're kind of letting go of the shackles of martyrdom, because martyrdom and service have been so tied together forever. And anyone who's a parent is probably still in that model, like every day of their lives. So how do you separate from that and come into standing tall in your service, asking for the right rates? I also have this sort of intuitive game that I play with myself. What is the right number? What is the number? I actually see it. What is the rate that is the rate that needs to happen? It's not necessarily I need to make this amount of money. It's more no, I know my value and I'm just going to ask the universe or whatever you want to call that. What's the right thing I need to be charging, rather than putting on the hat of the martyrdom, or somebody who's a good girl. Let's just call it what it is. I'm going to make my rates really low so everybody can benefit. I get that. I get those intentions, but also you need to eat and probably put your kids through college. So yeah. What about that?
And look, this desire to want to help everyone is the fastest track to helping no one. Mm-hmm. It just is in so many ways, mostly because you just can't share one person. Right. And this effort to try to be affordable for everyone, to appeal to everyone, to be able to help everyone means you get burnt out, you're overworked, you're underpaid. And at the end of the day, you're incapable of helping anyone. So let's just put a little finer point on that. Sorry, Erin, I feel like I interrupted you there. You had something.
You didn't. No, you didn't. I was enjoying, and I actually do. I price things the exact same way, and I've never been able to articulate it. It's no, this is the price. This is how much it costs. It's just, I can't tell you how I can't, because people will ask, how did you decide your pricing? It's I don't know. It just came to me.
It was in the ether. It was just there.
It was, and it feels right. And it's, but like, it's also very, like, I'm very empowered by that price. When somebody asks how much it costs, I'm like, this is literally the price. This is the price. Like, there's no smoke and mirrors here. I'm not greasing anyone's wheels. It's literally, this is the price. I don't discount it for anybody because that's the price. Right. So I really get to sort of own it, and I never have to question it or belittle myself or martyr myself, worrying about, is it too much? Is it too little? But I really love imagination exercises like this. I love them. Like these thought-provoking questions, like, if you could have blankety blank, what would your life be like if you had this, like, imagine this amazing experience, like this idea of, if you have all the resources you could ever need and want, what would you give? Like, because I feel like I've done this exercise from the perspective of my wealth consciousness. If I had all the wealth I wanted, how would my life be different? And then you're like, well, I would have this car, and I would have this freedom, and I would have this, time. And that's nice to think about too. But it's another level to think, how would I start giving back? How would I start showing up for other people? Because the wealth consciousness exercise is very me focused.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really excite me. I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't get super excited about reciting my wealth affirmations, but I would get excited about imagining the contribution I could make.
Well, here's what I notice, because I'm the same way, Erin. It's just like, when the paradox is, when you start thinking about what you want to give out and you truly can stand behind it, it helps you get out of your own way so that everything starts flowing your way. It's just this weird thing. It's like, I don't really care if I get that car, but you probably will get that car if what you offer out to the world is even more important than you getting that car.
I always hear that. I mean, can you explain it metaphysically? Like, real quick.
I call it, okay, again, how to put language on this stuff. It's hard, but I will say this. Ever since I started doing this practice, or any decent spiritual practice, I have experienced what I call a bigger flow. It's like the bigger flow of life that's just there. Like when people say, the universe has your back, or the universe wants good things. And lots of people just want to punch you in the face for saying something like, what are you talking about? But if you have the visceral experience of like, wow, I'm in this flow and I can't describe what's happening, there's a million ways to get at that. Like, I think artists get there, like a lot of people get there in different ways. This is just one way. But I would say that sort of bigger flow is what you're tapping into. So you're not so worried about grasping for your little thing in your little world. Like, there's something bigger going on and you can feel it and operate from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the things I hear a lot, so my role at the school that Erin and I work with and work for is as a missions director, enrollment director. So I'm talking to people that are interested in entering health coaching. And, we're talking about things like everything from what our course is like, but really my favorite conversations are the bigger picture about health coaching, about what a health coach really does and why they don't have to be concerned that they're not a doctor. Because guess what? You're not treating diseases. That's not what we're doing. We're not prescribing medications. You're a health coach. And here's the difference. And we talk a lot about also like about finding clients. And we talk about how, I kind of opened the curtain a little bit. Like, in order for you to have a business, you have to be able to solve a problem. And so here's a question that comes up a lot is, how do you equate what it is people think they want that they're looking for? I'm just going to use the easy, low-hanging fruit and the easiest thing to attack, weight loss, right? That's what they think they want. And why many people hire health coaches once they've tried everything else, versus really at the end of the day, what's driving the desire for that weight loss, and kind of speaking to that. Because there are a lot of coaches that like, I want to do so much more, but I feel like in order for me to get the clientele I need, I have to kind of give them what it is they think they want, but then at the end of the day, kind of provide what they need. And how do I how do I assimilate those two things? How do I message that and market that? And that's your thing, like putting words to this kind of stuff, right?
I have thoughts. Yes.
Yeah.
So one thing that I find is incredibly powerful is to distinguish between your marketing brain, which is the one that wants to grab, get out there, expand, whatever. And then there's your client service brain, which is the care you bring every person you're working with, and also the true value that you offer. And so one exercise I do with my clients is the 5 client field study. It doesn't have to be 5, it could be more, but looking minutely at what exactly they came to you with, what you guys did together, and what the results were. And there's way more to that, but that's pretty much the gist. And so when you look across 5 different clients that are kind of representative to the people you typically work with, you start integrating what you just talked about. Like, they came to me with this, but this is actually what happened. And they were so happy because ... That is a perfect jumping off point for your copy, for your message. And you can even speak to that. Everybody wants to lose weight. Here's what I've learned in the day. That's you being an educator, right? Like, here's what I learned around weight loss and what sometimes is behind that. And so someone is then able to be self-reflective, even as they're like, I want to lose weight, but wait, there's more to this story. This is fascinating. I want to work with this person because they're asking the right questions.
Yeah.
So that's a way to.
I like that. You know what I like about that? I hope this isn't like too pragmatic, but I mean, can you be too pragmatic? I don't know. I'm a pragmatic person. What I like about that is I've gotten into this habit. I don't know if anybody listening has, but where I'm rolling through my client calls, clients. Okay, that one's done. Good. Oh, on to the next one. Great. Good. You're doing good. Okay, great. Oh, hi, you're good. You're good. Okay, let's do this. You're good. Okay. And all these clients are having an individual client journey because that's how health coaching works. It's client led. So all 3 of these people that I just described, although they're doing my protocol, they're doing it in their own way. So that's, everyone's having a unique experience, but I'm not setting aside time after to really download the unique experience they're having. You know, I definitely have my my session notes. I know the outcomes they're getting. But I can honestly say there hasn't really been a time where I ever then intentionally went back to pull that apart, to look at it very closely, to perform a field study. You know, it's like I was doing my due diligence, taking my notes, but then I never did the next step, which is, what am I learning about clients and about my business from working with these folks, you know, kind of just getting onto the hamster wheel.
There's all these studies now about what journaling does to our brain, right? Like around anxiety and whatever. This is like journaling for a business owner, where you just can calm down around always being in service, always trying to provide value, but you're not really sure that you are. This is kind of like a debrief. This is what's happening. To me, that's incredibly soothing to the entire nervous system. And then you're like, oh, I achieved this, which stops you from having to convince the whole wide world of your value the next time you're in a marketing situation. Yeah,
it's almost like an additional little segment you add maybe to your client note-taking. Maybe it's just maybe, you know, for your eyes only. I was thinking about this because we just launched a course pretty recently for health coaching and medical practices. So we teach health coaches how to like chart in the way that medical practices do, right? Because you have to slide into this medical practice and behave the way they do. And so they use SOAP notes, which I remember learning SOAP notes when I was an Army medic, and it came back to me. And the SOAP notes, the S and the O is the subjective notes and the objective notes. The subjective notes go in there. It's like, this is what the client presented with. This is the plan. This is the protocol, the assessment, you know, but also here's my just sort of brain dump, my personal point of view on how this went. So I feel like health coaches could add that. Like I could add that to the bottom of my client notes. Maybe it's a password protected field that my client can't see because we do collaborate on these notes together. Or maybe they can see it. Maybe that's interesting for them to see. Like from my perspective, here's what's kind of going on with Sally. Here's where we're at. Like that sort of just last minute, small little download of what I took away from it before I move on to the next thing. That just intentional moment, because I do think we can get into this hamster wheel when practices get busy. We get excited. Like, yes, that was a great client call, but we don't do that sort of mindful work at the end to really drop into what happened, I guess.
Not only does that help you just sort of ground yourself in the value you're providing, but it also provides you with the greatest marketing copy ever. So you're never out of ideas on what to talk about.
Yeah. Keto, carnivore, paleo, AIP, SCD, low FODMAP, so many diets, so much confusion. And if health coaches are having a hard time keeping up, imagine how clients must feel. To make sense of it all, Primal Health Coach Institute partnered with registered dietitian and health coach Martha Tettenborn to create a comprehensive functional therapeutic diet specialist certification. This flexible online course dives deep into the many different types of therapeutic diets. You'll learn the purpose of each of these guides and how to help your clients map out a nutritional plan to resolve their specific health issues. As a certified functional therapeutic diet specialist, you'll help people reach a deeper understanding of food as medicine and transform their lives for the better. Find out more at primalhealthcoach.com.
So here's what I'm thinking through. So typically the people listening to this podcast, they're either practicing health coaches looking to grow, or people that are kind of brand new to this. They're sort of hovering around it. They're brand new and they're trying to figure out how to get started. Do you think from the standpoint of either techniques or language that differs at all based on where you are in the maturity of your business?
Okay, before I answer that, I want to back up and just share with you something I've discovered that might start answering that question, and then I'll get more specific based on where people are in their business. So after I sort of made my commitment to go into that mindset side of things, and I discovered that it was super helpful for business owners, I also did another field study where I worked with 40 more business owners. I did their marketing plans, and along the way, I discovered what I call your marketing archetype. And that just simply means, what is your lane of service and contribution? What is the way that when you're in that mode, it's sort of the brand behind the brand, that you come alive and people can feel it? Like, what's super compelling about how you show up? And when I did that 40 times, I realized there were 5 really strong categories. I'll just list them. There are nurturers, adventure guides, door openers, steady presences, and celebrators. Each one of these, like a nurturer, the deep why of a nurturer is they love to make it safe for others to thrive. You know, a lot of people think they should be like that, but for nurturers, it's energizing to do that. If you're an adventure guide, it's very different. It's much more like, what's the big picture you see for people? And then you empower people to get there by going for it yourself. So it's just a completely different energy. What I've been studying is, okay, fine. Each of these archetypes have a strength or lots of strengths, but they also have a very specific way of telling their story. Mm-hmm. So for example, a nurturer needs to, and this is stuff I can nerd out for 10 hours, so stop me if you need to, but like a nurturer is the one who's like, because they bring the warm fuzzies, it's really healthy for them to tell stories of suffering, because people trust you to have their back. You can be real about how hard things are, and then tell good stories about how people moved through and got to a better place, right? Instead of, here's some solutions, woohoo! Like, you don't need to do that. Contrary to that, if you're an adventure guide, it's much more about like, well, what is the big picture that I can achieve if I work with you? Mm-hmm. And that's straight to the solution, rather than like talking about the suffering, talking about, right? And so each of those archetypes, I could tell you all kinds of ways that you will be compelling when you tell your story. That's what I've nerded out on for now 5-6 years. And that's my job.
So nurturer, adventure guide. I had celebrators. What were the other 2?
Door opener and steady presence. Yeah.
Well, okay. The deal is, people are now listening and they're like, well, which one am I? So, so the nurturer.
Now we got to dig in.
Can you give us sort of the high level descriptors of these archetypes? We kind of get the idea. The nurturer, you kind of describe their marketing approach. They can still tell stories of suffering because they have a warm way of doing that.
Yes.
Well, why don't you go for it? Yeah. So we can all find out.
And also, here's a couple of things that I want to let you guys know. Number one, I do have an assessment on my website that I worked very hard on, and it's just innatemarketinggenius.com/assessment. So innate, like INNATE, innatemarketinggenius.com//assessment. Takes 5 minutes, and you will know what you are. You might be 1, you might be 2, you might have a secondary and a primary. You never know. So that's one thing. Another thing is, just for fun, I could muscle test you guys to see which ones you are right now in this hot minute. And then we can have that chat if you want.
Okay, but be prepared to answer a lot of questions about muscle testing.
All right. If you guys are game, I'm just going to check each one of you, and maybe one for Health Coach Radio if that's appropriate. So, all right. So if Laura has a minute. You're a door opener, Laura. That's the one I got for you. An only door opener. So we'll have that chat.
Oh, you gotta fill me in.
Yeah. Okay. And Erin. And you're a celebrator, straight up.
Oh.
Here's what that means. And I'll just go through those two, and then I'll let you know what a steady presence is, because that's the one we haven't talked about. So a door opener is somebody who absolutely loves opening up new ways of looking at something. And they tend to have like a gajillion ideas at any given time. They're also natural educators. They're always like, okay, let's push this, let's innovate, let's, look at it from a different way. And so the challenge for door openers, door openers never have any problems coming up with content. The challenge is, what is the most relevant thing, the thing your intuition wants you to talk about right now? Like, that's, do you have a yoga practice you can do when you have 50,000 ideas that will help you take a breath and land on the one idea? So that's door opener. Laura, I want to check in. How does that land for you?
Yeah, there's so much that's so true in that. Aaron probably knows this about me too, that we'll be on, I'm always coming up with, hey, I have this idea. What do you guys think about this? And blah, blah, blah. And all of these things are like great ideas, but let's get down to and oftentimes it kind of stops me a little bit in marketing because I get ambivalent or unsure about the best path forward. It's hard for me to really land on something and really double down. I'll eventually get there. It just takes me a while. But okay. in terms of kind of marketing and how I speak to my clients, absolutely, in terms of, well, hey, what if we looked at it this way? And how does that feel? And in terms of just how I speak with my clients and relate to my clients when they are consistently going down one path and butting their head against the wall. I love the brainstorming exercises and coming up with all the other ways we might be able to find a solution for something.
One thing to keep in mind is that because you're a door opener, you are consistently asking people to innovate, which some people can freak out about. And so a really helpful thing for door openers to do is have ways for people to dip their toe in the water, like little, trial things, like trial offerings. That's a secret sauce in marketing for door openers. Think like any application, 14-day trial, like something equivalent of that.
Cool.
So that's door openers. And then for Aaron, you're a celebrator, and celebrators are what everybody thinks they should be for marketing, which is basically you have your own natural flair that you bring to the table. And your deepest why is that you want to bring the good life to others. So a healthy celebrator is always going for that. You just want to bring the good life. So you could have, your flair could look like you're really funny. You have a beautiful design sense. You're like a walking party, right? You're just like fun. And, you have some kind of flair that Laura could probably point out. But anyway, and the way that you tell your story and market is simply look around the stuff you do, the people you work with, and everything about your work, and figure out like what you absolutely enjoy and appreciate. And just talk about that. That's it. It's almost deceptively simple, but you are such a natural appreciator and enjoyer of life and existence. And a lot of us don't have that gift. So celebrators actually allow us to step into the flow of life and the good life in general. So that's pretty much it. I don't know. How does that land?
I'm thinking you Googled or something, because so in my messaging, I've been over the last couple of years doubling down on this hedonic messaging a little bit. So it's like humans aren't meant to be dieters and exercisers. We're meant to be like in the moment, experiencing joy, pleasure from food, And so I was doing an exercise with my business coach where I'm trying to figure out what's the unique message I bring to the table. And what's interesting is this business coach that I'm working with, it feels like everybody's doing the same thing that I'm doing. That's just my filter bubble. It's like, wow, everybody's in the exact same space as me. So I have to try to carve some unique piece. And the thing I did find was I want my clients to like fully immerse in the joy of life while also taking care of their body. Like having experiential moments is crucial. It's crucial. Having joy is crucial. Treat yourself, crucial. And so I feel like that over the years, I've doubled down on this message. Everybody else is hardcore jumping into their cold plunge. It's like, no, I like to be warm. I like my glass of wine. All these things can coexist with a healthy body as well. So I don't know. That's kind of what came up for me when I was hearing that, which is it surprised me that I was a celebrator because I thought I was going to be the steady presence. I just assumed I was.
Interesting. Yeah.
But with the way you described celebrator, I was like, oh yeah, actually that seems to track.
Yeah. And not only is what you just described, a very celebrator-ish kind of message. But also one thing that you probably would enjoy doing is appreciating other leaders in your community. Like that, the example I love to give is for the NASA space program. I once looked at who were the nurturers, who were the adventure guides, who were the, right? And the celebrators were people like President Kennedy, who basically said, wow, this thing has the capacity to take us to the moon. And it was his appreciation of the leadership at NASA that basically got billions of dollars, probably trillions of dollars given towards that effort. And, you know, the whole country got behind him. That's the power of a celebrator, appreciating leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
You know, it's interesting too, when you said door openers are natural, educate. I mean, that's my degree. My degree was in elementary education. And in the early days of my business, and even now, most of my clients came from me just being like, well, let me show you. Right.
Yeah.
And it came from, I did a lot of webinars, a lot of public speaking. I was very comfortable there. And I led with this sort of educator as a way in to kind of create a sense of trust, you know, that people then naturally drew themselves to me. And what I need to figure out is how to take that and get it up on social media in a way that's consistent, that doesn't drive me crazy.
Well, the other thing too is like, do you have a sense of what kind of people now resonate with certain archetypes, or does it not matter? It's like you put your energy out there, your marketing energy out there, and the people who need to pick it up will pick it up.
Yeah. So I get that question very often. It's like, well, I need to make sure I'm really listening for people's buying styles and just being, here's the thing. I noticed that with service providers in general, the issue is not that they are not going to be all things to all people. It's that because I just noticed that gets covered. Like you're going to meet people where they are. What the challenge is, how not to exhaust yourself and be the martyr as a service provider and marketer. Like what is, if you had to decide which direction to go in and what message to go with, like at least now you have a deepest why. Like what do you care about the most, which people feel from you. Like if you're a celebrator and you're this really great enjoyer of life and you have to decide between like 5 different messages that you want to put out there, go with the one that shows your absolute enjoyment of existence every day of the week. So it's just meant to focus a little bit. It's not meant to be like, well, you can only be a celebrator in your messaging forever. Yeah. Well,
I think that's good feedback. And that tracks for a lot of elements to entrepreneurship, which is, you know, if you're this whole trying to be all things to all people, there's going to be a lot of friction in some of that. Some of that's not going to come naturally to you, and you're going to be battling that. And that's when burnout kicks in, when we're doing things we don't like or that don't come naturally to us. That's when it feels like a drag. And we do always try to tell our students, like, guess what? Maybe this is a celebrator and me coming up, but guess what? You get to build this exactly how you want it. Whatever you want to do, just do it. And we get very brainwashed, or maybe not brainwashed, but influenced, shall we say, by what we're seeing other people do. And it's like, oh, that guy bought a cold plunge. I guess that's what we're doing now. I guess I should buy one. I'm just going to completely continue to throw cold plunging under the bus because I think it's so goofy.
Which, by the way, I am a cold plunger. I'm going to do this tomorrow in 40 degree water here.
Oh, why? Okay. I get it.
I know.
Why when you could be warm? Anyway, so I do think that especially new health coaches get very overwhelmed by seeing what everybody else is doing and thinking, well, I have to do all of these things. Some of those things are going to feel great. Some of them are going to feel too frictiony. And that's what's going to bring you down. So it's like, maybe just don't do this is your permission to do what feels good and don't do what doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just sort of circling back to Laura, when you were asking, like, does it make a difference when messaging, you know, when you're in different phases of your business? And I would say this, for me, it always comes back to the people you're serving and the true value of what you're offering at any given moment. Because even if you've been, and that starts with something like the 5 client field study, or just talking to people, you know, if you're just starting out, it's basically get your hands on anyone who says yes, right? It's like, just start doing it. Don't worry about who your audience is. You'll figure it out as you go. That's my attitude. Like take 2 years to figure that one out. Give yourself a lot of grace and just coach people, anyone.
Right.
So then, and then there's the other side of it. Like you've been in business for a long time and maybe you've hit a rut. But still, you could still do a 5-client field study and just be like, well, okay, so how did I actually serve these people over the years? And where's the juice and where's the opportunity in those answers? To me, that is always gold. I feel like every business owner should probably do a 5-client field study like every year.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it on the agenda, but can I tell you what I just recently did? I'm so excited about this. So because I'm working with this business coach and I have to get clear on who I serve, it's like, great. I have hundreds of client intake forms, hundreds over the last years. I was like, well, all of their health goals are written in there. All of their visions of health are written in there. I have a lot of information in there from the clients in the client's own words. All I have to do is go back through these hundreds of intake forms and just, collate it. And
oh my God, that is such gold for you. That's going to be great.
But I would never do it. I've been thinking about doing it for years, but I hired a virtual assistant to do it, paid a little lump of cash. She had it done in 2 days. And I've been scrolling through this Excel, Google sheet, and it is full of gold in the client's own words, what they wanted. Now what I have to do, because now this is years and years of client data. A lot of the clients I do remember. I remember what we did. Like I have the client notes. I could now reconcile what we did with what they wanted. Like my virtual assistant could do that for me. Mm-hmm. But like for the perspective of the coach who's been in business for a while, it's not too late to go back and retroactively do this.
And guess what? That list is like your next 50 social posts.
Yes. It's literal gold.
Yeah. I love it. Hey, so before we forget, can you go back and talk about the steady presence?
Sure. So a steady presence is usually the person who can't stand marketing because they're sort of like a pillar and they energetically want people to come to them rather than them chasing. And the reason for that is they're sort of this treasure trove of depth. Like they have deep expertise and lots of resources and lots of like people they know, and they just want people to come and ask them, and then they've got their back. So their deepest why is like, hey, you've got this. I have, stuff that will get you there. Like they love assuring people of that. Like no matter how bad things get, they're there for them. So the way that steady presences actually tell their story is like, all right, what do you want to really go deep on and nerd out on in your business that you know is relevant to your people, but they know nothing about? Go do that. Like read a book, go to a conference, do whatever, and then come back and talk about it. And even if we don't understand a word you say, all we care about is that you know what you're talking about, so that we'll just like pick up the phone and call you and be like, all right, I need your help. You clearly understand this material and I need you.
Oh, that's interesting. That's so interesting. Because I feel like I see a lot of those. And part of me is, this is my interpretation was like, this is echo chamber noise. Like you're going off to conferences and then coming back and, telling us what you learned, but like, how does your client benefit from that? But there are clients who are seeking that out.
Again, it all comes down to what do you think, and this is an art and a science. What do you think is the most relevant that like that people don't know about? So there is a caveat with the whole like nerd out about anything. Make sure that people have been asking about this issue.
Nice.
Yeah.
So do you find that based on these sort of archetypes, I guess where blocks tend to lie, or with the Achilles heel, because, we struggle a lot within our own community on how to get the people that have everything they need. Just get out there. And we, Erin and I, there are things that they all have in common, right? In terms of this sense of imposter syndrome or this sense of overwhelm. I don't even know where to start kind of thing. But do you find with these various archetypes, are there things that are especially common for nurturers or especially common for or whatever, or is it kind of a lot of this pretty consistent across the board and it's just part of being new to something?
When you say especially common, do you mean like challenges that get in their way of getting out there?
Yeah. So I'm just going to use one example of someone who comes to mind as someone that I can think of as a steady presence, who is super bright, takes every single course. There's two people, both a he and a she, take every single course they can get their hands on to learn more because they feel that's their value, is to be this sense of knowledge. And because of that, they're always in pursuit of knowing more and they never get started.
Yep.
So, and I'm wondering if this is a particular block for that kind of person who feels as though like clearly they know a lot, but they still are always, it's like look, the people that I respect the most that are highly, highly just educated and clearly an expert in their field, they have almost the confidence to say, you know what? I'm not sure I know the intent. Here's my educated guess, but I could be wrong. Or they put a caveat around everything. So those people, even as educated as they are, they will provide an answer, but they always leave room for like being wrong, right? Whereas these other people feel as though if they're wrong at all, it somehow makes them less worthy, or that they're not, I don't know, that's just something that came to mind. Maybe I'm way off base. Maybe it's
no. I have some thoughts. Okay. So number one, it's very likely they're steady presences. I'm just going to put them in that category. Yeah. And it's fine. Like they get to geek out as much as possible, but they also have to continually ask themselves, like, who have I served today? Mm-hmm. Right. And like, have I actually gotten out there and changed lives? So another thing that really helps get out of that sort of rut, because to me, that's a bit of a rut. Yeah. I've been in that rut. I mean, it's really easy to just be like the perennial student. It's scary to go out and actually fail, which is going to happen. So what I've found that is tremendously helpful, I'm just going to go right back to the mindset tool I mentioned, generosity practice. If you spend a little bit of time every day contemplating what would most fulfill you in your service and offering to the people in your life, to the world, to the universe, to just everybody, just really feeling the impact you could be having. And in that, like, let me be specific about that practice. In the practice, there's no, like, you don't have to tie yourself to reality. You just have to have fun with what you could contribute. Mm-hmm. What I've noticed is that vibe, and it is an imagination process. Erin, you were saying you love imagination processes. Like the most powerful version of this practice is when you get out of your own way and let something drop in visually that actually can surprise you. You're like, I'm giving out a pile of sticks. What? But like deep intuitively, you're just like, yes, I don't know why I'm giving this away today, but I am. And it changes you when you just trust that and go for it. What I've noticed is that people who tend to be a little bit more introverted, this is a great practice for them to get into because number one, they're probably really good at imagining things. Number two, this is the bridge between them, their sort of inner life, and their potential to change lives. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the runway for that airplane. They do it. And then they're like, all right, I do want to change lives. Like, let me figure out how to in real life.
Very cool. Awesome. I think, the power of imagination, I think is a pretty critical thing to tap. This is really fun. I actually have a tactical question, if I may, because we do like to talk about sort of tactics a little bit. So I love these archetypes. This kind of thing to me is such an interesting marketing hook. Right? Because everybody wants to know what type they are. Yeah. People crave this. Oh my gosh, an online personality quiz. I'll take them all. Right. So you built this based on all this field research you were doing. You said you worked really hard on it. And I'm looking at it now. It's 35 question sort of quiz right on your website. I want to do it, even though you just told me what I was. But anyways, I'm getting into the tactics here. Yeah. Do you think this is a useful marketing tool that people should be like? How do we build something like this? How could I come up with my 5 client archetypes? Like, what was the process of that for you?
Sure. So it's funny. I'm just reading this book called Scorecard Marketing. I don't know if you guys heard about that one, where people use like different kinds of assessments to get new clients. So my brain is absolutely in assessment land right now. So it's a great day to ask me this question. I was literally reading it this morning at 6 a.m. Anyway, the way that I went about it, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was not looking for these archetypes. I was just doing a process that I thought was really powerful. And then when somebody asked me to give a talk, I'm like, well, what the heck am I going to give a talk on? So I just randomly said, well, maybe there's something in all these archetypes, and bam, there were the 5 categories that I hadn't even known were there. And that was my talk. And I haven't looked back since that day. So I would say maybe that the answer to your question is the same as how are you developing your approach, right? Like, what is it that you do differently? And what are some interesting things you've observed in the people that you serve that maybe other coaches haven't observed, and you're just sort of noticing some categories or just different phases of their development, or like the way that they approach their own health. Like some people, I'm sure, have very distinct personalities with how they approach eating kale for the first time, like simple things like that. Like, just, are they going to resist the heck out of it? Are they like, yeah, let's do this. I'm a great student. I want to do everything. Like, that might be a thing. So if you're thinking about developing an approach, that approach could turn into an assessment.
Oh, yeah. I love this idea of talking about the approach. We were talking about that before we pressed record, and I was like, yeah, the approach, that's something that we need to double down on. How would you define, big question, how would you define one's approach? So when we're talking about the approach, people are thinking, is that my program? Is that my personal nutritional health beliefs? Is it a combination of these things? Is it my ideal client? Like, what's the approach?
Yes, I've thought about this a lot because I tend to be someone who loves routine. So I have to be very careful about over routinizing everything I do with clients. But I've noticed through my experiences with clients that like there's a sandbox that I need to create for them. I need to and there are limits. There are things that work and things that don't. I've learned this along the way. And so to me, the approach is your firm knowledge of what works and what doesn't work, and building a structure around that rather than it's a nice idea and you think it'll work. Yeah, there's a place for that when you're testing it. But after you've tested it for a while, it's probably going to be pretty clear. Okay, I need to make sure that clients do this at the front end. And then, right. And if, again, you're not putting people too much in a rigid path because you've learned over time from many different people. Like for me, I have every client do the generosity practice for 30 days before we even talk marketing. And I've learned that if people don't do it, they're not as bold. They're not as ready to take on a leadership role in their marketing and become those great content marketers when I give them their one core strategy. It's daunting. I'm not giving cute strategies away. I'm saying you need to start a podcast. You need to do a signature talk, and all kinds of things like that. It can be daunting. So they have to go through the generosity practice training so that they're ready. And they pretty much always are. So that's my approach that I got through testing. So I would call it the sandbox, the sandbox that's going to ensure their success.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I just wanted to close the loop on my question, and why I was so excited to hear your description is because I'm teaching a beginner business building course for new health coaches right now. And I'm trying to explain to them, you call it the approach. I'm kind of referring to it as programming, your product, your solution, all of these words. And it's hard for people to conceptualize what I'm talking about. And it's what's the first thing they need to do? What is the very first thing your client needs to do? So for some, it's cut out all carbs if you're a keto coach. For some, it's jump in a cold plunge if that's your whatever it might be. There's going to be the first thing. Great. That's the first thing. What's the second thing they might need to do? And then, so we have this sort of this mild trajectory. And then the coaching relationship is client-led. It's client-led. So we have these principles and this sort of path we can go down, and where the client how the client moves through that is led by them individually, the client individually. So I really like talking about this stuff because I think when health coaches talk about becoming a health coach, they're like, I'm going to health coach people. It's yeah, but you need to have a approach, a program, a protocol, something. What is that going to be? It doesn't have to be elaborate. It's just, what's the first thing? What's the second thing? What's the third thing?
And one thing about the approach, because I don't know about you guys, but it's easy to get stuck in sort of, it needs to be really unique and original. No, it doesn't. All that matters is you could do the exact same approach as somebody else. It's likely you're not going to do that. But all that matters is okay, the people you helped and you generated great results for, what did they need for success? Mm-hmm. And even if 100,000 other health coaches are doing that, who cares?
Right.
It just works.
Right. What brings out the kind of uniqueness is your personality, your approach to how you explain this. But here's the other thing too. We do our institute does some corporate wellness programs, right? And so we have one program that we wrote. Erin did a fantastic job of putting this in just a fantastic flow of information. What are the big rocks? How do we take people through this sort of flow of concepts. And so, but we're doing this with groups of 50 people, 150 people, what have you. And everybody, at this point now, I can put people into archetypes. The I don't like vegetables people, the AKA healthy food doesn't taste good people, the plant-based people, I don't like meat people. So other end of the spectrum, how do I get enough protein? The late night snacker people, the ones that just can't seem to, and the solution to sort of overcoming these challenges is going to be different for each person. But the crux to the program and the concepts that they're learning are the same, where we can individualize this in terms of coaching is tell me what you took away from that lesson today. How does that sit with you? How do you think this fits into the grand scheme of things of what it is you're trying to accomplish? What obstacles do you see getting in your way? And is this something you feel like you can tackle right now? Or is this something maybe we need to revisit in a couple of weeks, right? So, you have this general concept that we feel all people kind of need to know. It's how they interpret it, how they apply it, the importance, how they prioritize this information is all going to be very unique to them. Erin talks about, and we try to, this is a very client-led relationship and process, but the program can be very sort of structured and organized to just provide framework, right? And structure to the whole thing.
That, and I will say this, and this relates to the program you're talking about, but also any health coach relationship, which is that your students or your clients are borrowing your will.
Yeah.
As well. Like, again, back to the, does it need to be original? Does it need to be fancy? Whatever. No, it just needs to be helpful. And also, the structure is helpful, but also your presence is helpful. So I just want to put that in there.
I love it. So we lost Erin, her Wi-Fi crashed. So
oh dear,
like side note there. So it's you and I. So one more question for you before I let you go. But in terms of marketing medium, in terms of social media, video, do you have some opinions on what tends to be the most impactful for this particular kind of, service, I guess, health coaching, or does it depend on the coach and where they're comfortable? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast. So I will keep it short and sweet. And by the way, if anybody needs extra support with that sort of, if you're going to do the generosity practice contemplation, I just put out a book like a year and a half ago. That's like this beautiful journal that sort of eases you in. So just look up generosity practice on Amazon. It's there. So as far as strategy, when I work with clients, I make sure that they have one core content strategy. I alluded to that a little bit. And the way that I help them decide on that is, I can't say nurture should do this, adventure guys should do this, because here's what goes into it. Yes, that factors in, but also how do you naturally connect with people in the first place, right? Yeah. A really deep dive on that. A deep dive on what are your business needs right now? Are you just getting going? Are you in a rut? Are you like plateauing? Are you like 2 years in and you're ready to really bump it up a notch? So that contemplation, like what is that one core strategy? Either find someone like me to help you with that, or just like go on a long walk in the woods and really think about like how you love to connect with people and what is calling to you on how you need to communicate that regularly. What that does is it gives you fantastic core content that then you can repurpose, which of course everybody loves to repurpose, but you have to have good content in the first place. And that takes blood, sweat, and tears. I'm sorry to say, you got to commit for a while. So that's, you'll know, or you'll hire someone to help you know.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you're at that like 2-year mark and you're like, all right, I've got something viable here. Yeah. I'm just stuck, or I'm in a rut. This, instead of buying another stinking course, invest in someone who can help you get to the next level. It just makes so much sense. And everyone that I've spoken to that have done that has told me they've earned their money back easily within that first year without far less than that. So the investment, that's the one thing I can say I've never regretted, is investing in myself, right? When I'm really just, this is the direction I want to go. And I feel the need, it's calling to me, literally a calling. If I don't lean into that, I'm doing myself a disservice, and find a way to make the investment, because it will be worth it. There are investments that I've made that, did I want more out of it? Maybe. But I don't regret having gone down that road because I learned something. And it also helped me identify what else I need, which was also super helpful. So tell our audience, if you don't mind, well, I'm sure you don't mind, how to find you. So you mentioned, you dropped a couple things, your book, your website, the assessment. So where can people find you and connect with you to kind of learn more about you and how to work with you?
Yeah, a couple of different places. One is my website, which is innatemarketinggenius.com. Again, innate, INNATE, not always a common word. Innatemarketinggenius.com. And the assessment is there. That's a great place to start. Also, my book is on Amazon, Generosity Practice, 40 Days to Unstoppable is the subtitle. I also have a podcast called Marketing for Humans. If you just want to hear how, all right, Christina's talked about her approach, but how does it actually play out? So that's a good place to just see, even more field studies, let's call them. So, and I'm on Facebook. If you look up Innate Marketing, I'm not super active there, but one last thing I'll mention is I do a monthly Marketing for Humans community class, and that's on Eventbrite. So if you just look up my name, Christina Frei, or Marketing for Humans on Eventbrite, it is the second Tuesday of the month at noon Eastern. It's free. It's an hour and a half. Come on down. And I usually explore one topic like, hey, how do you translate your marketing archetype into real content? Or how do you figure out your one strategy, like one thing at a time?
I love that. Yeah, we'll make sure we put all that in the show notes. So thank you so much. Again, we learn so much from people like you that just have a passion for helping people like us. So I just thank you for your generosity and your time. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to tip my hat to all health coaches because I'm working with one right now and she is a gift from God and you guys are all gifts from God. We all just are so blessed to get healthier because of you guys. So thank you as well.
Awesome.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.